Sarah knew it was a cult. She knew Marshall Applewhite was lying. She knew the spaceship behind Hale-Bopp Comet didn't exist. And on March 26, 1997, she drank the phenobarbital mixed with vodka anyway. Sarah was one of 39 Heaven's Gate members found dead in that California mansion. Purple shrouds over their faces. New Nike Decades on their feet. $5 bills in their pockets for the journey. But here's what nobody talks about. 7 members had exit interviews recorded weeks before. In those tapes, they explain the logic. They describe the contradictions. They acknowledge the absurdity. Then they say they're doing it anyway. One woman laughs nervously and says, quote, "I know how this sounds." She drank the poison 2 weeks later. This isn't a story about brainwashing. That's the comfortable lie we tell ourselves. The truth is far more disturbing. Because Sarah and the others weren't mindless zombies. They were accountants, nurses, computer programmers. Average IQ of 127. Many had advanced degrees. And they all knew. Former NXIVM member Sarah Edmondson was branded with Keith Raniere's initials in 2017. She knew it was wrong while it was happening. She stayed another 4 months. Why? The answer involves neuroscience, sunk costs, and a mechanism your brain uses right now. Yes, right now. Let's start with what actually happens in your brain. Dr. Alexandra Stein spent 7 years in a political cult in Minneapolis. She has a PhD in social psychology now. Her research reveals something terrifying. Cults don't control your mind. They control your attachments. Here's how it works. When you join, they separate you from your old support network. Family. Friends. Anyone who knew you before. NXIVM called this removing suppressive elements. Scientology calls it disconnection. Heaven's Gate called it separating from your human vehicle. Different words. Same mechanism. Now you're isolated. Your brain enters what Stein calls disorganized attachment. This is a term from childhood psychology. It happens when your only source of safety is also your source of fear. A child with an abusive parent experiences this. The parent hurts them. But the parent is also the only one who can comfort them. The child's brain short-circuits. They can't run away. They have nowhere else to go. So they attach harder. They try to be perfect. They blame themselves. Maybe if they're good enough, the abuse will stop. Cults manufacture the same dynamic in adults. Keith Raniere would scream at NXIVM members for hours. Break them down completely. Then comfort them. Tell them he loved them. Tell them this was for their growth. Your brain releases oxytocin during those comfort moments. The bonding hormone. The same chemical released during childbirth and sex. It literally rewires your neural pathways. You become addicted to your abuser. Not metaphorically. Chemically. Dr. Robert J. Lifton studied Korean War POWs in 1961. He identified 8 criteria for thought reform. Milieu control. Mystical manipulation. Demand for purity. Confession. Sacred science. Loading the language. Doctrine over person. Dispensing of existence. Every major cult uses all 8. But here's what Lifton found that nobody mentions. The POWs knew it was happening. They could describe the techniques being used on them. They still couldn't resist. Knowing didn't matter. Mark Vicente was a top recruiter for NXIVM. He made over $1.2 million bringing people in. He directed the training videos. He knew Keith Raniere's teachings were plagiarized. He knew the technology was repackaged self-help cliches. He knew the income statements were fraudulent. He stayed for 12 years. When HBO interviewed him for the Vow documentary, they asked when he first had doubts. He said year 2. He knew for 10 years. Why didn't he leave? This is where it gets dark. Because by the time you realize it's a cult, leaving becomes impossible. Not physically. Psychologically. Let's break down the trap. First, sunk cost fallacy. You've invested years. Maybe decades. You've donated money. Sold your house. Cut off your family. Recruited your friends. If you leave now, you have to admit all of that was wasted. Your brain will do anything to avoid that admission. Studies from the University of Ohio in 2018 showed people double down on bad investments 73% of the time rather than admit failure. Second, identity fusion. Dr. Scott Atran studied this at Oxford. Your sense of self merges with the group. You don't think I am a member of this group. You think this group is me. Leaving doesn't feel like quitting a club. It feels like suicide. Brain scans show the same areas light up when identity-fused individuals imagine leaving as when they imagine their own death. The anterior cingulate cortex. The insula. Terror centers. Third, and this is the big one, cognitive dissonance requires a landing pad. Leon Festinger coined the term in 1957. But his later research is more relevant. When you hold two contradictory beliefs, your brain experiences physical pain. Actual neural stress. To resolve it, you need an alternative framework. When NXIVM members started doubting, where could they go? Back to their old lives? Those were gone. Their families had cut them off. Their careers were destroyed. Their friends were all inside NXIVM. The only people who understood them were other members. Subscribe so stories like this don't get buried in the algorithm. These mechanisms are being used right now. So members create a third option. They know it's wrong. But they stay anyway. They compartmentalize. Sarah Edmondson described it perfectly. She said, I held two truths. Keith is a fraud. And Keith is helping me grow. Both at the same time. The human brain can do this. It's called doublethink. Orwell didn't invent it. He observed it. Heaven's Gate members wrote in their journals about the contradictions. They questioned the logic. Then they wrote affirmations. I choose to believe. Choice became the justification. If I'm choosing this, it can't be manipulation. But here's what nobody noticed. By 1996, Heaven's Gate had shrunk to just 39 members. They'd peaked at over 200 in the 1970s. Most people did leave. The ones who stayed until the end weren't the most brainwashed. They were the most isolated. They had nowhere else to go. Dr. Janja Lalick runs a cult research center at California State University. She was in a political cult for 11 years. She's interviewed over 2,000 former members since 1996. Her research reveals the most disturbing finding. People don't stay because they're brainwashed. They stay because leaving requires becoming a different person. And most people aren't capable of that level of self-destruction and reconstruction. Think about it. Your entire worldview is built inside the cult. Your morality. Your purpose. Your understanding of reality. The cult provides answers to every question. Meaning for every experience. When Sarah Edmondson finally left NXIVM in 2017, she described the first 6 months as psychological free fall. She didn't know how to make decisions. She'd used NXIVM's rational inquiry method for 12 years. Without it, she felt paralyzed. Should she have coffee or tea? She'd spend 20 minutes deciding. Former Scientologists report the same experience. The church provides a complete ethical system. A technology for every problem. When you leave, you have to rebuild your entire decision-making framework from scratch. Most people can't handle that void. So they stay. Even when they know. But it gets worse. Dr. Alexandra Stein's research found that 47% of people who leave high control groups join another one within 3 years. Different cult. Same structure. Because they never fixed the underlying vulnerability. What is that vulnerability? Stein identified it in 2016. It's not stupidity or weakness. It's a specific attachment style formed in childhood. People with anxious or disorganized attachment are 8.3 times more likely to join cults. These are people who never develop secure bonds with caregivers. They're searching for absolute certainty. Unconditional belonging. A parent who won't leave. Cults promise exactly that. And when you're inside, they deliver. Yes, there's abuse. But there's also community. Structure. Purpose. For someone who never had secure attachment, that trait feels worth it. Here's the part that should terrify you. The attachment style that predicts cult vulnerability is increasingly common. A study published in Psychological Science in 2019 found secure attachment rates dropped from 62% in 1988 to 48% in 2018. Anxious attachment increased from 19% to 28%. We're producing more vulnerable people every year. And the cults are evolving. NXIVM wasn't a compound in the desert. It was executive success training. Members had jobs, phones, internet access. They could leave anytime physically. They couldn't leave psychologically. The new cults don't need walls. Modern MLM schemes use identical techniques. So do some corporate cultures. Amazon warehouse workers describe the same dynamic. The job is destroying them. They know it. They see the contradictions. But they've invested years. Their identity is tied to being an Amazonian. Their friends are all co-workers. Where else would they go? The mechanism is the same. Only the branding changed. So why does this matter to you? Because you're not immune. Nobody is. The same brain mechanisms that kept Sarah in Heaven's Gate exist in your skull. Sunk cost fallacy. Identity fusion. Disorganized attachment. These aren't cult-specific vulnerabilities. They're human firmware. You use them every day. That relationship you know is toxic but can't leave? Same mechanism. That job that's destroying your health but you can't quit? Same mechanism. That political ideology you defend even when the evidence contradicts it? Same mechanism. The cult isn't out there. The cult architecture is in here. In your brain. Dr. Stephen Hassan, who deprograms cult members, says the question isn't how do people fall for cults? It's what conditions allow people to leave. His research identifies 3 factors. First, maintained contact with outside perspectives. Second, a safe landing place to go to. Third, a catalyst moment that breaks through the cognitive dissonance. Most people never get all 3. They know they're trapped. They stay anyway. The 39 people who died in Rancho Santa Fe knew. The thousands still in Scientology know. The NXIVM members who stayed after the brandings were exposed knew. Knowledge isn't enough. You need infrastructure to leave. Community. Purpose. Identity. Something to replace what you're losing. If you don't have that, your brain will choose the certainty of known suffering over the terror of unknown freedom. Every single time. Subscribe and hit the bell for a new dark truth every day. And if you think you might be in something you can't leave, ask yourself this. Do you defend it even when you know the criticisms are valid? Do you isolate from people who question it? Have you sacrificed things you can't get back? If yes, you're not weak. You're human. And the first step isn't admitting you were wrong. It's building a place to land when you jump. Because the real question isn't why people stay in cults. It's what kind of world makes staying feel safer than leaving. Subscribe and hit the bell for a new dark truth every day.